Hey there, welcome to another episode of On Our Pursuit. It's a new year. You might notice some new branding. Got a new thumbnail over on the podcast player, some great new branding, the bright orange over here on YouTube. I hope you enjoy those. Starting up the new year, this was a great way to have a fresh start to the podcast. Speaking of the podcast, on this episode, I'm joined by my good friend, Chef Lauren Owens. Now, if you've been following the content over the years, you know that this is not Lauren's first appearance on a podcast with me. Go back to the All About Your Benjamins archive and you'll see the episode a little over a year ago on this new kind of show on All About Your Benjamins called The Pursuit. It was spelled out. The vowels had not been taken out yet. And who would have known that that episode would have been one of the first episodes that would lead to where I am today. Pretty special to have Lauren back to continue the conversation about her pursuit of the Tiny Onion, the restaurant that will be one day. Now, before I get into a few things I want you to pay attention to, I want to ask you a favor. Take a moment during the video, at the end of it, or at the end of the podcast, and head to the comment section and let Lauren know what this episode meant to you. What was it from her story that really stood out to you? How did she motivate you? What are you going to change on your pursuit because of what Lauren says in this episode? When you put yourself out there sometimes and you're vulnerable on a podcast, you don't always get a lot of feedback and you don't know if you're having any impact. That's why we share these stories, is we want to impact people. Let Lauren know how she impacts you. I greatly appreciate it. Where's this inspiration going to come from? Okay, here's a few things I want you to pay attention to as you listen to the episode. First, when Lauren left the restaurant business, she had a vision. She knew what she wanted to create. She knew where she wanted to go. But as she went on this journey, she allowed the vision to unfold. So pay attention to the importance of having a vision, but also not being so stuck on that vision that you don't let the universe guide you and take you where you need to be. Experimenting, learning, pivoting, learning from mistakes, which are only just learning experiences, and moving forward in the direction you're supposed to go, not necessarily the direction that you thought you were supposed to go. The second thing, kind of in the same vein, pay attention to how Lauren has a vision for her end game and that she admits that that end game might have changed a little bit as she's gone on her journey. The end game is always going to be the restaurant, the Tiny Onion, but now the timeline has changed and what that restaurant store might look like has changed as well. It's great to know where you want to head, but also just allow the universe to guide you. Be aware, be looking for the signs, listen to your intuition, follow your heart, follow your passion, and it will lead you to exactly where you're supposed to go if you will allow it. And the final one is, you hear me always talking about spirit, mind, body, and money, the connection amongst those. We hit a little bit about the body in this and why it's important to take care of yourself and why it's so important for you to eat your veggies. So pay attention to those few things. Let Lauren know how her story has motivated and inspired you. Again, I would greatly appreciate that. All right, that's enough for me. Let's get to this episode with my good friend, Chef Lauren Owens. So I think the only proper place for us to start is revisiting the Tiny Onion Part 1, which I just told you before we hit record was actually about a year ago. So today we're recording, it's January 30th. I checked YouTube, we posted that on January 16th of last year. So about a year ago, we had this conversation where we introduced the world to the Tiny Onion, at least my audience to it. And here we are a year later, and unfortunately, we haven't had as much time to catch up over the last year, so I'm going to get an update of what's going on with the Tiny Onion and what you're up to live and here at first time with everybody else. But before we do that, without going too deep of rehashing the first episode, for anybody who hasn't caught it yet, go back and watch it, but stay with us on this episode. Give everybody your background real quick about who you are and how you got to be where you're at today.
Okay, so hi, I'm Lauren Owens. I am a chef by trade and spirit. So I've been in the business for over 20 years now. And I would say the last 5 years, I have been strongly building my own brand and business as a personal chef. And I go into people's homes and I meal prep and I cook and I do dinner parties and date nights and teaching sessions and all sorts of stuff.
And unfortunately, I live too far away to benefit from this. I do get to get some cookies every once in a while when I get out to New York City and see Tyrone, and so I got to have some of those last time I was out. Well, so over the last year, you mentioned over the last few years, you've been really focusing on your brand and building Tiny Onion, and we'll get to Tiny Onion in here in a second. But how have things been going over the last year with that building?
They have been going extremely well. And I get too excited when I talk about it. But looking back over, some of my paperwork and just some of the things and my client list and the things that I've done, it has really been growing quite a bit. And I'm super busy. Over the last year, I've gained at least 4 new meal prep clients, which is huge. Those are the more steady ones. I've done a handful more dinner parties, date nights, which is one of my favorite services that I do. And then a lot of like big time occasions as well. So it is substantially busier over this past year than it was the year before. And I do know like a lot of those metrics, some things have to do with COVID and such things like that. But we're kind of like on our third year out of that. This year, start of this year, I like busted into the 2023. So I am so busy right now. And the end of last year was super busy too. So it's definitely set the stage for the continuance of busy.
You should totally be excited talking about all of that. And I've got to imagine that some of that excitement that you have talking about it is why the success is continuing to grow and compound. But is there anything specific that you can attribute to that?
Honestly, like I've been thinking about it a lot because, when things are going well, you want to think about why they're going well is also not just when they're not going well and what you can do to change it. But when they're going well, you want to think about, what you need to keep your finger on or what you need to adjust and things like that. So the only thing that I can like certainly attribute to it is just, and it's going to sound basic and silly, but like my consistency. That is like the only thing that I can definitely track, that I know that I am consistent in everything that I do, as far as just like my daily practices for myself, my daily practices for my business, how I interact with people, how I post, how I do things on social media. All that stuff is so consistent. And I think people are starting to like catch on and get used to it and expect it. They call me out on it, things like that. They talk about it. And then I get a lot of, oh, I saw you on, or I heard about you in this group, or such and such recommended you. So I think it has to do with my consistency in that regard, because I don't do much of like advertising bigger than social media, and I get a ton of almost all referral business. So that's one thing.
Let's stay with consistency, because there's so many things in life that we can't control, and being consistent is one of the things is a variable I think we do have a lot of control over. There might be some things that break your consistency, but at what point did you realize that doubling down and focusing on the consistency was important for you?
I would say it had to been like, I started this business in the middle of the year. So I would say the first full calendar year of building my business, I started to realize like I wasn't super consistent with posting. I didn't treat social media like the job that it is. And I was just noticing like the effort that I was putting in was the effort I was getting back. So I was getting like trickles of business, trickles of people wondering what I do or what Chef Lauren, who I am, things like that. And then I realized that like once I really put the finger on the pulse and kept going and posting every single day, letting people know who I was every single day, and the difference between like annoying people with repetitiveness and then kind of like comforting them with what they know that they can go to me to get all the time, that really clicked for me. So probably about a strong year into my business, and I've been going strong with that ever since.
There's something very important, I think it's very important that you mentioned, that the effort that you were putting in was what the results were that you were getting out. It's kind of like, for a horrible example to be corny because of what we're talking about, like you put in crappy ingredients, you're probably going to get a crappy cake or pie or cookies, right? But the better the ingredients you put in, assuming you don't burn them in the oven, the better the product that's going to be out there. But I think that is very, very important, because a lot of times people, they're looking for the quick get rich quick schemes or like the shortcuts to get there. And they might work in the short term, but they're not going to be long-term benefits because you're not putting in the effort. So I think that's a very important fact, it's a fact. It's a very important fact that I want people to pick up on, that you dropped very casually. It could have been glanced over. But that sounds great. So I want to share with you why I wanted to have you come back on the podcast, because as we were talking about, the episode a year ago was one of the first episodes on All About Your Benjamins under this kind of new show at the time, The Pursuit. I had no idea back then that The Pursuit would turn into Pursuit, which would turn into its own brand, which would turn into On Our Pursuit. But the reason I want to have you back on is everything that Pursuit stands for, following your passions, aligning your spirit, mind, body, and money. You embody that with what it is that you're building. Now, I have the luxury of knowing you personally, to know that that is how you are, which we see on social media. But some of the other things are you've taken a risk, which we covered in the last episode. And if there's any new risks that you've taken over the last year or so that you want to highlight, just to kind of share the experience and inspire people, I definitely want to hear about those. And in that taking on the risk, you bet on yourself. You left a job where you had a steady paycheck and it was safe, if you will, to go bet on yourself. And ultimately, you're doing something that you're passionate about. And for anybody watching it on YouTube, you can see Lauren listen to me, and she's engaged, but then as soon as she starts talking about what it is she's doing, she lights up. Like, that's passion, and it can't be faked. So when I think of you, I think of everything that you embody, it is pursuit, which is why I wanted to have you come back, because I think your story, how you've approached it, what you're doing, the hustle behind it, will inspire people to maybe take some more time to reflect on the passions in their life and see how could they slowly introduce it, which leads me to my next question. Slowly introducing it, again, without revisiting the whole last episode, how did you begin to slowly introduce becoming your own business and your own chef and your own brand into your life? I know that was kind of a sudden thing, but still, whether it's new things you're doing, adding different approaches to serving your clients, how do you slowly introduce things before you kind of go harder into them?
That's a good question. So in the beginning, it was kind of just pulling at any direction to try to get my footing. Everybody in my world, for the most part, knows or knew then that I was a chef, but they didn't think that anything beyond that, because I was always in the restaurant and working for somebody. So I never had to sell myself in a way where I wanted to come into your home and cook for you or be your chef. I was just a chef. So I had to really dial into getting that out there. And obviously leaving a job that I was with for almost 10 years and all of that, I did the whole announcement and things that you have to do to kind of let all your people know that, you're no longer with that company, purveyors, and so many relationships that I've built. So I did that, post that everyone does when they leave a thing or something. And then from there, I was just like, what do I do now? So then I had to realize that I had to change all my personal social media accounts, either change them or in addition to have a business one as well. So I have a Facebook business page. I just turned my Instagram account, the one that I had there, into my business one. And then I built a personal one because the one that I was actually operating from was more in line with my business. So I did that. And then I just did a personal one where I put all my nieces and nephews and pictures of clouds and stuff like that. But I started building social media accounts just built around my business and what I wanted my business to look like, or what I thought that it would look like in the future. So like I said, I was building it from the ground up. I didn't really even know. And step by step, things just started changing. I started adding new services. I started changing the way, the format of the way I did things. And then it kind of all just went from there.
How much of what you were building was what you were building to? And we could use the word manifesting, the future version of it, or how much was it of this is what I want? I guess, did you really have this vision, or were you kind of this is what I think I want?
Yeah, I didn't have the vision of being a personal chef. I had the vision of no longer working in another restaurant or for a larger company ever again. I always knew once I left that last job that I wanted to have my work for myself and have my own business. And then that was what I would say that Chef Lauren was the conduit to building my own business. And Chef Lauren is my business right now. I would say the end game then, and I might change a little bit, but the end game then was having a brick and mortar place, the Tiny Onion. And that's how it kind of all began. I needed to just get to that part. And then as I'm moving along, I started to find my niche in what I'm doing now. And I do think that this is where I want to stay for a while. But I would say the Tiny Onion, having a spot, is definitely my end game, but it has been pushed back, I would say, a little bit. Just due to the success of what I'm doing now and what I didn't think was possible. And I do think that ultimately this is just going to catapult me into just having a spot where I stay all the time. But now I'm meeting new people, I'm going into your homes, I'm becoming a part of the family. The relationships I'm building are amazing. I really did want to start traveling so I can come to you. And I can start doing that maybe, next year and start building that back into my business plan. Like, 2020 did kind of derail that a little bit. And then I would say 2020 probably even derailed the brick and mortar. I know there's a lot of places that survived, a lot of places that were built because of it. And I would say my business as a in-home personal chef thrived from 2020, and I decided to kind of keep that going. And I'm really happy where I'm at. And I think the end game of the Tiny Onion, the actual spot, because my whole business is the Tiny Onion Chef Consulting Services. I think that is still somewhere out in the ether of where I will end up.
I think this is really cool. I think this is really cool because it highlights that we have these plans of where we want to go and what we want to do. And we have this vision and we plan and we kind of take actions towards getting that. And then, the universe sometimes has other plans. And again, going back to things we can control. You couldn't control 2020, out of our control. What you could control was how you handled it, how you received it, and how you moved forward. And what you've shown is that if you take the crap that comes with you, make the lemonade with the lemons that are given to you, that good things can happen. And what may end up happening, and what I'm excited to follow along, not just because you're my friend, but follow along just to see, is that, okay, does this vision of Tiny Onion that once was, that you had in the past, is that the way it plays out? Or do you have your Tiny Onion one day, but it's a way that you never could have imagined? And what's success? Is success only if Tiny Onion is a physical brick and mortar place? Or is success if Tiny Onion exists, giving you the ability to bring your services and do the things you love to the people you love working with, and maybe it's in a different format? And I'm in the camp of, I don't think we should get too fixated on that image of what we think it's supposed to be, because I think sometimes we get where we want to be, but if we're so fixated on this image, we miss the fact that we actually achieved our goal because it doesn't look exactly like we thought it was going to look. So I think that this is good for people to hear, is that it doesn't always have to go exactly as you planned. And if you are fluid and flexible enough to be able to move with things, then you keep on moving forward. It's when we kind of give up because things don't go as planned that we have the setbacks.
No, I completely agree. I think the ability to pivot is probably one of the strongest attributes of a entrepreneur or just a person in general, but definitely someone that's trying to build something or move towards some sort of goal. Being able to pivot through adversity and pivot at all, and keep that same energy that you had with your original idea that you thought was going to be so great, or your original desire end game, and just kind of keep that same thing and push it through to whatever's happening. I think is super important, and that's what I noticed has been happening with me.
Well, and another thing you kind of you mentioned and described without pointing out was something that you and I were talking about before we hit record, and kind of how individuals who are their business can grow their brand. And do you grow your personal brand first, or do you grow the brand of Tiny Onion first? And is there a right answer? And I don't think the world operates in absolute, so I don't think there's a right answer. But from where you are and what you're building, I think it makes tons of sense to build the brand of Chef Lauren, and the Tiny Onion can be there in what it is today. And then one day you shift your brand equity over to Tiny Onion, and boom, your store blows up, or the physical place blows up, because everybody's a fan of you. And of course they want to go eat at the Tiny Onion because it's Chef Lauren's place. So I think that's really cool, because the way I view things sometimes is I want to build the brand of the company first, when maybe it's better off to build up my brand and expertise and being known for what I'm unique about, and then the brand benefits it as well. So I hope there are a lot of creators that watch this, and a creator doesn't have to be an artist. Lauren, you are a creator, as you create art in the kitchen. I don't think it's that people think about that in that way, but we all are creator. We create in our own unique way, just in different forms. So there's plenty of creators that are going to be out there that have the opportunity to build their personal brand up and then leverage their personal brand to take the next step, which is what it sounds like I think is going to happen with Tiny Onion. Was that intentional on your part?
That wasn't, I believe so. The intentional part for me was building my personal brand, because I knew before the Tiny Onion was going to be a thing, I needed to sustain myself through that. And in order to do that, like I said, going into people's homes and getting people to want to hire me and to know me, they had to get to know me. They had to know who I was. So I focused all on building my brand of Chef Lauren, and I planned on lifting that brand and putting that into the Tiny Onion. Now, the strategic part for me was connecting the onion to Chef Lauren. Like, it's part of my logo. I talk about it. I tell you why I love an onion. Like, everyone, when they see an onion, they think of me. They take a picture of it and things like that. So it was very important for me to like bring a bit of that branding into the branding of myself, just so it's not like, oh, all of a sudden she has this tiny onion place. Like, what's that? So I have been strategic in that matter.
Remind everybody why you like the onion. It's not because you like to make people cry. So what's the story behind the onion?
It's not because I like to make people cry. It's a multi-layered reason, and I think the actual onion, I love it. It's symbolic reasons of like, it's just this round thing with a root on it, but when you cut it in half or you cut it at all, you're peeling back the layers. It looks different as you continue to pull it back, and it just becomes this little thing in the middle. When I cut an onion in half, and I always tell myself like, the day I cut this onion in half and I don't look at it like it's the first time I ever seen it, then I need to put my knife down, because I get so excited. I'm like, look at this beautiful thing. And people look at me like I'm kind of like crazy, but I'm like, oh, it's so beautiful. And I love the way the layers, they're like some really big ones. There's tiny ones, and they get bigger and tinier as the onion. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, the layer of the onion is not always like bigger from the outside to the inside. Sometimes you'll get like 3 layers in and this really thick layer. So like, that's like life. Like, you don't really know what layer you're going to be peeling and what you get to. So I love that part of it. Also, it's like the base, the beginning part of all dishes for the most part, unless people are allergic or they don't like onions. But even the people that don't like onions, they probably don't know that onions are in so many things that they love. They're just cut tiny enough that they melt away and they just add like this amazing flavor. So that's the one thing. And then I did a lot of, I did some teaching, adjunct teaching at Middlesex County College. And I would always show, I hate big onions and things, like big chunks of bad breath, I call them. Like in salads, like I always like say, no, you got to cut it nice and thin or cut it tiny. And I always showed my students how to cut a perfectly tiny diced onion. My friends make fun of me because I cut this onion, it's so tiny. So it kind of, the tiny onion just stuck with me. And I'm like, that's kind of catchy. So it went from there.
I love it. I'm not a huge onion fan, but I've grown to appreciate them. I'm okay if they're cooked. I don't like crunch on pretty much anything. So like, I'm not going to eat a raw onion. If you cook it and it's there, like, I'm okay there. But I remember my cousin used to like pick onions out of everything. So my mom would make meatloaf and it would have onions in it, and she would like decorate her plate with all of the pieces of onions around from the meatloaf.
That's interesting. I don't decorate with them too much, but they're almost always in things that I make.
Hey there, it's me again. Sorry to interrupt. How great is this conversation? How inspiring is Lauren's story, and how infectious is her energy? It's just been such a fun conversation to have had and to listen to it again as I'm editing it. I want to take a moment to direct you to the website justincastelli.io. Spell out my name, .io, and up top there's going to be a spot for you to click that says Daily Notes. Over Christmas break, when we were down in Marco Island, I started to write about my journaling. So I would meditate, I would do my journaling, and then I would start to process it and type it out. And I decided to turn those into a daily posting. And they've kind of caught some wind and are really an exciting and fun piece of content for me to create. I have a feed that you can subscribe to where you just get that daily note every single day. Nothing more, nothing less, just a note every day from me writing about something that has to do with spirit, mind, body, and the connection to money. It's everything that we're talking about in these podcasts, but short daily notes for you that sometimes will be really exciting and other times you might just kind of read through it real quick, but nonetheless, they're really short. So head on over to justincastelli.io, click the daily notes, and in there you can read one and you can subscribe down at the bottom, or you might get hit with the pop-up that asks you to subscribe if you would like. I think you'll like them. All about spirit, mind, body, and money, a little bit about creativity every single day, short and sweet to keep you going on your pursuit. All right, speaking of keeping going, let's get back to the conversation with Lauren. So coming back to the last year of the growth and success you're having, have there been any surprises, good or bad?
I would say the initial surprise would be like how busy I was. One big surprise, and I didn't linger on it too much, and I think maybe the surprise wasn't that it happened. It shouldn't have even been a surprise, but what I was proud of is how I handled it. So I ended up losing like a really long-term client. And I wasn't expecting it all. And through each year, building my business, I've always had something like that. The first time it ever happened, it hit me so hard. And ever since then, I have been building myself and my business and do the way I do things so that like if I did lose a client or I lost an opportunity, it will never hit me as hard as it did that very first time. Now, coming off of, having a very steady salary, building this business out of nothing, no cushion, I locked in on this big whale of a client and I kind of put all my focus into that client and I wasn't on the outskirts like trying to get any more or build anything else. And then when that client canceled, I was like, ooh. And I was back at like zero and didn't have anything. So ever since then, I was, I had my hands in all sorts of pots and, just building opportunities in every action that I took. So this last year, right before the end of 2022, I lost a client that I didn't expect to. And you should never really expect to or not to, because you never really know, and times are hard and things happen. And when things do get tighter, I have noticed in my business that I'm like kind of one of the first things that get cut because I'm a luxury for most people. I do find that I am a need, but also in their minds, like when they think of what is really a need, then my business gets cut, or my service rather gets cut. So I think that surprised me, just like kind of like superficially, because knowing the relationship and that I had built with the particular client, I didn't think that I was going to lose it, but I was surprised more so by just like it kind of like bouncing off me. Nothing like the first 2 or 3 times that it had happened, and I just kept the ball rolling. And it almost, and I don't know if on purpose, but it opened up more doors. And of course you lose something and you gain something, and however you look at that and however you what you believe in. But I do believe when doors close, they close for a reason and other doors open for that reason. And I have been so busy ever since. So I don't know if, that was just like shoring up some of my time or I was just getting too comfortable, whatever it was. But that surprised me a little bit, I would say. I don't know if that really counts.
No, that's great. But the moral of the story, there's morals of the story, but one of the ones I want to hit on is just the concept of when one door closes, another opens. And I think, I have no evidence to support this, but I think the only reason the door opened for you coming out of that situation is because of how you handled the door closing. You have an opportunity to choose, how do you handle the door closing? Do you go down a path of negative energy, which is only going to attract more negative stuff to you? So then it's one client is followed by another one because we're pulling that towards us. Or you look in every situation, there's a learning lesson. You may not have done anything wrong, but it may have opened your eyes to, I could have done something different. So there's a learning lesson in it. And then you position yourself on a positive energy wave and go forward. And then that's when the doors open up. So I think that's great because you could have allowed that one client leaving to spiral down because you felt sorry for yourself and you made excuses and you blamed them rather than, feel emotional about it, process those emotions, and then pick yourself up and move forward, which is what entrepreneurs have to do, but I think we have to do in life in general. My question to follow up on that is, you mentioned the first couple of times it really rocked you. Did it rock you from a financial standpoint or was it more emotional? And I want to focus on the emotional side. How did you get to a point to where the emotional impact to you was less and you're able to move forward with it? Because I think like the money stuff impacts us, but I really think it's the ego maybe or just the emotional side that really hurts us more. So how did you get to where you could process that quicker without holding on to it internally as much?
That's a great question. I'd say the first time it definitely was a financial rock, but also just as strongly an emotional rock as well. Because, and every business is different, but with my business, like I said, I've become part of the family. I was in this particular household multiple times a week, and I just built a relationship with the family. You just start to get comfortable. You feel like, it can never end. So when that client canceled, I started to that's when I did a lot of reflecting on myself and my business. I created a checklist. I asked myself questions like, did I do this? Did I do that? What didn't I do? I tried to figure out as to why I lost them. And even if I didn't come to the answer as far as they were concerned, I knew that in my mind, I did all of the things that are important to me and true to myself and my brand. And that's how I built, like, I wrote it down at the time, but I have like a mental checklist now as I go through the interactions with all my clients. And as long as I know that I did all of those things, I feel more and more okay with if doors close, because I know that I hit all my marks, and everything is not for everybody. So and things just keep moving, and I'm more and more okay with that.
I think that's part of the key, is that if you can look at every situation and know that you gave your best and you did everything you're supposed to do and delivered on everything, and if the other person doesn't like it, there's nothing more you could do. You can only control what you can control, and who knows what's going on in their life to make the change. So I think that is no surprise that it's a smart way to handle it. It'd be kind of cool if you were able to one day kind of recreate that checklist and like put it out there for other people to use. Like I created a daily planner and then like a content thing that I just put out for free to help people kind of organize it. Like people love that, because I think a lot of times people don't know, like there's enough friction to get started on developing a practice like that. But if they're able to print off a page and write down their own affirmations or their own checklist that you gave them, like people really appreciate that. So it's kind of cool. So just something for you to do back in the day. Brand it with tiny onion. Like it could say Chef Lauren, and the bottom can have a little onion, but it just be like a format of checklist. Like here's where you write your daily checklist type thing. And for people who are inspired by you, it's a connection to you that you can kind of help them. So it's kind of cool is what I was thinking about. Yeah. So you are pretty transparent, or you share as a part of your branding and the content you create, your fitness journey, which I love. And I talk about a lot, connecting spirit, mind, body, and money. Like the body component of finding your authentic life is really important. You're doing it from a physical and showing people and inspiring them with kettlebells and the track runs and all those things and pull-ups, which I'm pretty sure you can do more pull-ups than I can. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can. Strict years of CrossFit, I could out butterfly pull up you, but strict pull-ups, I'm working on building those. But talk to me about how important it is for you, one as a chef and knowing what food means to the body and our health, and then the fitness side. How important is to you to be taking care of yourself both physically and nourishing healthy, and kind of why should people be paying more attention to that?
That's probably honestly like the most important thing to me about building my business or as a person than anything. So personal health and, eating well and mental health, all of that kind of goes into it. And that probably is like the base of my business, like why it was built. Because when I left my previous job, years prior to that, I was probably in one of the worst places of my life as far as my mental and physical health was concerned. I was getting terrible, terrible migraines every day. And it was just something that I accepted as to like part of life for me. And I started to change that around 2012 when I really focused on my health and getting out every day and getting a workout in, caring and knowing and learning about what I ate. Now, I always loved food. I always ate my veggies, but like never in a way where, I knew like what each veggie did for you and all the health benefits and when and why to eat things. And I started to really dive down into that post 2012. And as I started to build my business, incorporating that into my business. But I would say taking care of myself is my main priority. Everything comes after that. You are nothing without your health and like being healthy. So like things that people list before that, their family, money, the things that they like to do or their hobbies, like nothing matters. You won't have any of that if you're not healthy. So like anytime anybody listed what the most important thing is to them, it should really be their health, because that is like the top of the pyramid and all the things come after that. So to me, like taking care of myself is my main priority.
Hey, I was one of the people for years that would put family first. And family is first and most important to me. And it took me a while to realize that what you just described, I can't be my best for Ange and the boys or for my clients if I'm not taking care of myself. And for years, I would sacrifice myself because of everybody else. And within it's getting close to 2 years now, I've shifted that. And I know that I'm better for everybody else because I'm prioritizing me. And the crazy thing is, the reason I was so afraid to prioritize my health is I didn't want to be selfish. Like, I want to put other people first. I want to serve. So I wanted to be selfless. But in the reality, by being selfless, I was actually being selfish because I wasn't giving everybody my best because I was trying to be there for everybody. So it's kind of like this vicious cycle. But now, like, I have a routine that I don't even have my first client meeting until 11:30. That way I can go do my yoga 4 days a week at 9:30. And for a long time I had a trouble, like, it's 9 o'clock, I should be working, but no, like, I need to take care of myself. I can be way more efficient and productive in fewer hours if I get that yoga in. And I do some work in the morning to offset it, but like, we can build our lives around taking care of ourselves. And I used to feel guilty going downstairs to get a workout in because I knew Ange needed help around the house. But now I've started doing it. I do the work. I do an extra workout in the evening, and I bring Silas down with me, and he's in there with me. So there's some bonding time, but no one is mad at me. My clients aren't mad at me. Ange isn't mad at me, and then I end up feeling better than ever. I'm more productive than ever. I'm probably more pleasant to be around, and I share all of that ramble just because I know there's a lot of people who think, well, I've got to put my family first. And from somebody who lived that life for a long time, no, you got to put yourself first. And your family will be okay if you take an hour for yourself to go work out. Or maybe you split your hour workout up into two half hours. Do like the cardio half hour in the morning and the weights in the after. So a half hour of time is easier to grab than maybe a full hour, but you've got to prioritize your health. So I think that's very, very smart. Going back to kind of working yourself through the headaches and the mental health side of things, do you have what I call like a mindfulness practice? Like, how do you keep your mind healthy?
I would say my thoughts, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. I have been working very hard on managing my thoughts, and I'm sure a lot of people understand, like, you'll just be like sitting or doing or working and your brain starts going all different directions and just thinking about things that either will never happen, things that aren't happening yet, or things that if they are happening might not be happening the way they're going to unfold in your brain into real life. So I've just been more mindful with the thoughts that I allow myself to think, as well as the reactions that I allow myself to have to the thoughts that I shouldn't be having, and then just at all. Like, when I can remember specifically the time period in my life when I started operating out of gratitude and really changing my life and just being thankful for all the things that I have and not so focused on the things that I didn't have. And that's, I feel like, when my life changed, like just being grateful for everything that I have. And then so many more things started to like come because of that. And you hear that a lot. And now people seem to be really opening their eyes to that and focusing on that. And it might sound cliche to some people, but I really find it to be super true that just like, you don't have to, you get to, like waking up and being grateful, praying in the morning or saying thank you to whoever you believe in when you wake up, like that. A lot of people take like those tiny things for granted, and that is huge. So I feel like for me, just being grateful and, open to whatever comes, and just know that even if it's like something hard, things will work out in my favor one way or another.
It's important for you to share that, because I do believe that it's hard for people to accept that until they experience it themselves. But eventually, after hearing it so many times from so many different people with different stories that come from different areas, like, then I think you have enough confidence that, well, let me give it a try. And then once you try it, and once you experience it, then you realize, and I think it's easier to accept it. And then I think you also, once you experience, you realize why people like you and I just can't stop telling people about it. Like, we know how good it is. We want other people to experience it as well. So that's why people talk about the practices that they have that really work for them. It's not like, maybe for some people it's ego, but I think for most people it's genuine. We want to help other people. It's like when people first found out that cigarettes were bad, like, you wanted to tell your family members, don't smoke because it's bad, it's not healthy. It's because you cared about them. It wasn't about anything else.
Nothing else, yeah.
I know, and you know, how being grateful can reposition everything in your life to put you back on a frequency of positivity, which only brings more positive energy. But until you operate from a positive mindset and see that it does in fact attract positive things, it sounds like it's crazy, but you've got to try it. And
sorry,
Go ahead,
people
yeah.
think it's fake. Like they think that you're not being genuine by like always being happy. And yeah, there are times where like I get sad over things or I get mad and things like that. But I tried to always operate in, just like a more of an uptick, a more positive way of life, because even though there's like bad things happening around or to me, like I think how you handle it is just gonna propel you into more greatness, or it can put you right back down into the hole that you dug yourself out of. So it definitely is real. And although there's some things that really bother me and anger me or get me upset, I just always try to stay as positive as possible.
Well, being optimistic and being positive does not mean you don't have emotions. It doesn't mean that you can't feel sad. It doesn't mean that you can't be mad. It just means that you don't let those lower vibration energies take over you. You have that feeling, and then you recenter and you get back to operating on a positive frequency. So it's not like I'm saying never be upset, never be mad. Like, no, you're allowed to feel these things. In fact, you should feel that and process that and understand why you feel that way, and then move forward. And then the final thing I'll add to that is just, a lot of those things that we want to get mad about and upset us are probably things that don't actually impact us and don't deserve our energy anyway. So it's like, don't be oblivious and ignore what's going on in the world, but also realize that what you hear and what you see is not always the truth. And like, we all live in the same timeline on this same world. And you can talk to one person and they think the world is doomed. And then we can come talk to you and we see optimism and happiness and gratitude, yet you're on the same world as that person who's seeing doom. And it's all perspective. It's all how we process things. And that is something we have complete control over. So I'm glad you brought all that up.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is the part of the show where I usually ask questions and kind of surprise you. I don't want to do that. I want to dive into a book that you sent me. Was it Unreasonable Hospitality?
Oh, yes.
And I want to have you kind of share why you think that book is so important and how being unreasonably hospitable is something that's important for you.
Okay, so the backstory to that book, it starts all the way back with Danny Meyer. So the book is written by Will Guidara, but I would say like the hospitality king in my world is Danny Meyer. And he owns the Union Square Hospitality Group, and he basically wraps his whole business around being hospitable and, really taking hospitality to the next level. Now, Will Guidara worked with Danny Meyer, and then he ended up, him and Daniel Hume ended up buying 11 Madison Park from Danny Meyer. And then they turned that restaurant into the best restaurant in the world, like literally the best restaurant in the world, got all the awards, all of the things. And they did that not just because the food was good and not just because it was a beautiful building, but they did that on the back of hospitality. And just recently, and I follow them all through their journey, and I love them as a team, like a front of the house and back of the house, because in my world, the front of the house and the back of the house never really got along the way that Will Guidara and Daniel Hume did. And behind the scenes, maybe they argued, but like they really came together and like saw each other's passions and really made it work. And that was always like the dream team for me. So when I heard that Will was leaving Daniel Hume as far as a business partner and then like doing different things, like my world was crushed. But he went on to do different things, and he wrote that book. So hospitality for him is like the end all be all to success and to businesses. And what I've noticed, even with the book Setting the Table by Danny Meyer, which I think is like the rock, I noticed that like all applies to any business, and anybody who is in the customer service business, anybody that deals with people and humans and selling themselves should care about hospitality. You should care about doing the little things to make somebody's day better, to make their life better, to just make them smile. Anything you can do to go the extra mile as a human, or definitely as a business owner, is only going to make you better as a human and a business owner. So Will gives a million stories in that. He gives his background. He gives examples, really cool ones of what they've done at 11 Madison Park. I've eaten there and I've experienced that. And just like seeing little clips, he's doing a lot of speaking now, like seeing the clips and him telling the stories of things that he's done that I didn't know of are like mind blowing. And it's just, I think it's super cool.
I think you hit on it. If anybody dealing with people
Yeah.
strip entrepreneur and business out, should be thinking. And honestly, I haven't finished the book. I've just been skimming through it because I read like 4 books at a time.
Yeah.
But it has made me rethink what it is and how we're doing things for clients at RLS Wealth. You're not really trying to grow the firm. So my focus is, well, how can I continue to wow them and do great work for them above and beyond the planning? And it's thinking about, well, how can I be more hospitable? How can I wow them? How can I do things out of the blue they wouldn't expect that really make them value the relationship even more beyond the service we provide? So I think it's a great lesson of just if everybody was unreasonably hospitable, at the grocery store, walking around, like how much better would the world be? And again, it's an action that we can all control. We can all control how we treat other people. So I thought I wanted to make sure we had an opportunity to promote the book first off, since you sent it to me, but also hear how that plays into not only your service business, but just how you treat people in general. All right. So I have 2 final questions for you. The first one, big, broad question. How do you define success for you?
I would say success for me, I think, is not definitely isn't a number. I would say it's more so like freedom, like the ability to just manifest and create my own life. I think that is what success is for me. My quality of life, putting all the things that I find important first. And it's not just about making money, but it's about taking care of myself, building relationships, making other people's lives better. That is what success is for me. And obviously your bank account grows due to that, but it's not I don't have a number that makes me successful. I want to keep growing, and that also includes my bank account. I want it all to grow. So,
Gotcha. But I think that it's true and this is another one of those things that's not necessarily easy to accept, especially if you find yourself in a position where you feel like you don't have enough. And what is enough is a different conversation. But that if you just focus on the right activities and doing the right things and treating people right, that good things tend to happen. And one of those good things that tends to happen is the money either rises to where it needs to be, or you realize your life doesn't need as much money, so what you have is enough. But I genuinely believe that when you align all the important things, the money kind of works itself out over time. And again, I know that's really hard to hear because there's a lot of people who are struggling, don't have enough, but I've witnessed it firsthand. I have clients, I have friends. I know there is truth behind it. It's getting people to the point where they have the ability to align those things, which I do think is spirit, mind, body, and then the money comes with it. That it does actually happen when you go about it that way. So I think that's a great answer. Obviously, there's no right answer to it, so I appreciate you sharing that. And the final question, which is always just a fun one, getting back post-COVID, conferences, speaking, you get to be a keynote speaker. Maybe Danny Meyer has you come out and talk to a bunch of chefs. What is the song that you're walking out to?
I just love that you said that. You put that out into the universe for me. I just recently was talking to somebody. I had a meeting with somebody, and I was just like, I want to be on panels, and I have so much in my brain, and I do these podcasts here and there, but I just feel like there's so much more to speak about and so many things that I can speak to. And I'm like, where is this big list that everybody chooses from to get onto these stages? I'm like, I need to be on it, so you just said it. So Danny Meyer will be calling me soon. So thanks for that. And I'll call you right after.
There we go. And I will come there with my camera, and I will create one of my short videos of your day on stage and doing all of that.
That would be amazing. That's happening. That's going to be, we won't put a timestamp on it, but that's definitely going to happen. So what song would I walk out to? I guess, oh my gosh. I like such a wide variety of music. I guess the song that I choose would more depend on what exactly the platform is, but it's a cross between there's a song, I think it's called My Fight Song or something by Rachel Platten, and it's kind of corny, but when I was in a really bad place in my life, right before I left my old job, the company, I used to play that song, when I did leave it, I used to play that song in the car driving to anywhere. And it was this is my fight song. And it's just it's more of a mantra. And I used to envision myself being on a stage or like going to collect some type of an award, and everybody that didn't believe in me, mainly in that main company, was like there, and like I won this like award and that song was playing. So it's kind of long-winded and silly. I don't know if that would be the song that I would play walking onto the stage, but that's the only time I ever thought about a song and a stage. And then like other than that, I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is like "Hustlin'" by Rick Ross, but that's probably not appropriate to play. Like the first line's a lot of curses, but so probably that.
I love it, and I love the story behind my fight song, and that's why I love music. I think music to me is so special because all these songs have special meanings. Like for me, the songs I pick aren't necessarily because they take me back to somewhere. It's either to like hype myself up or to set the stage and like get the room excited. So there's no right answer, but I just love that there's a story. No one has ever said, here's the song and that was it.
Yeah.
There's always a reason behind it, which is what I think is like really, really cool.
That's a great question. I never, I would never think of it that way, but that's great. That's a great question.
It's fun. All right, Lauren, I know you are a busy individual, and I appreciate you coming back for volume 2. I think maybe every January we should just do an update and just watch watch your pursuit as it continues on, and watching the Tiny Onion unfold and you manifest things and come about. And because I want people to see it happening. And if we keep on updating, they get to watch and follow along. I mean, before long, you may have your own reality show following you do it off these episodes. It'd be pretty cool. So I appreciate your time. I also appreciate your vulnerability and sharing your journey and what in the emotions behind it all. Because again, the point of the podcast is to help inspire people to bet on themselves and follow their passions and do all those things to live their authentic life. So I appreciate you sharing all that. Where can everybody find you? What's the best social media outlets?
Okay, well, first, thank you, because you, before you even really knew me, you seemed to know me. And I remember the first time we met, and you kind of pushed me. Probably you were one of the reasons why, like, some of the things that I do, I think about you telling me, like, you should do this, like video and all that. And I get so nervous. I still get nervous, but like, I was so nervous to like do a video. You're like, no, just do it. So you believed in me before I was as, confident as I am now. And I feel like I'm very grateful to you for that, for believing in me. And that people can find me at Chef Lauren Owens on every platform there is, almost. Just dabbling in Pinterest, but I am very active on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I have a LinkedIn page, and then you can inbox me or email. All my information is in all of those things.
All right, well, I will link to all of those down below. So make sure everybody can find you. And then we'll let everybody know when you're flying around the country jet setting, hooking up dinners and stuff. They'll let them know they can hire you for that.
That's on the 2023 goal list. So we're going to start manifesting that and getting that rolling. So you'll be one of my first stops.
Sounds good. All right, Lauren,
Awesome.
Thanks again. Everybody, thanks for tuning in, watching. Now, do me a favor. Go down to the comments, and I don't want comments for me. I want you to share comments for Lauren and let her know how her story inspired you, what you liked about the story. Give her some positive feedback so she can see how her story is impacting people out there. So head down to the comments so Lauren can be lifted up off this episode and she can see that her words are inspiring you out there. So with that, we'll let everybody go. Thanks for joining me on my pursuit and Lauren's pursuit. It's an honor to be a part of yours, and let's keep pursuing.